Hey everyone, it's Ludo. Alright, if you can hear birds in the background, that's completely normal. I'm recording this voiceover outside, early in the morning, before starting the day. And honestly, it's a pretty nice atmosphere. Anyway, now that this old floor is gone, it's time to move on to the next step. As you guys know, I always try to preserve and reuse as much as possible whenever I can. The goal here is to rebuild something solid and reliable using these old beams. This is where the old staircase used to be, the one I temporarily reused. The previous owners had actually cut directly into both beams to fit the stair stringers inside them. Back then, it was probably a pretty good way to stiffen everything up. But right now, honestly, it's not exactly helping me out. So the plan is to sister these beams to compensate for the weak spots left by the old staircase. Even if it means we won't really see the original beams as much afterward. I start by installing wooden supports on each side, which will hold the new reinforcing joists. Now, some people probably would have replaced all of these old beams entirely, and honestly, I wouldn't blame them. But personally, I don't really see the point in replacing everything if it can still do the job. After all, I didn't buy this house just to gut everything and rebuild it brand new. Otherwise, I might as well tear the whole thing down and start over from scratch. And honestly, I'd hate to lose these beams. They almost look like trees that were pulled straight out of the forest and laid directly onto these walls. They're not perfectly straight. They have flaws, weird shapes, irregular lines, but that's exactly what gives them character. Personally, I find that way more beautiful than perfectly milled factory-made beams. Now, obviously the goal here isn't to end up with the stiffness of a concrete floor or some massively overbuilt structure. Just something strong enough and comfortable enough for everyday use. Anyway, everyone has their own way of doing things, but that's kind of how I see it. Next, I sand the top side of the beams while they're still accessible. Once the new floor is installed, getting back there would be a whole different story. And on the opposite side of the room, I discover another surprise. This beam had also been heavily notched for an old masonry chimney flue. The old builders really didn't hold back. They had absolutely no problem cutting straight into beams. So, same treatment here. I installed another support to reinforce the area. Sure, that's one more beam that'll end up a little less visible, but don't worry, there's still plenty of them left. While the chemical anchors are curing, I take the opportunity to fill every hole that won't be accessible later on. This is where the old wooden baseboard used to be, along with the ledge in the masonry, where the original wooden floor rested all around the room. Quick vacuum session after that. There was honestly an impressive amount of dust, sand and sawdust sitting on these beams. And since I'll be treating the wood afterward, I might as well clean everything properly so the product penetrates as well as possible. I then tighten the nuts on the chemical anchors and add a couple of steel brackets. Doesn't look like much, but it'll definitely make a difference. Right, moment of truth. I pull out the laser, and yeah, it's a disaster. At this point, I'm getting used to it, but clearly the masons who worked on this house weren't exactly best friends with level surfaces, or maybe the house settled over time. Honestly, nothing would surprise me anymore here. Anyway, I'm not about to straighten the whole house today, so I take my high points, my low points, do a few highly scientific calculations, and get to work. I install the joist hangers at the right height, so the new joists line up correctly with the future floor. And in the end, having to reinforce this area because of the old staircase almost works out perfectly. One of the beams had already been slightly damaged, right where the old floor connected to it. I don't think anything's still living in there today, but after treatment, I'll definitely sleep better. Actually, I stopped sanding that section because I completely forgot those beams would eventually end up hidden behind the reinforcements anyway. Speaking of reinforcements, here they come. Now, obviously, these reinforcements don't come with arms and legs attached, so I still have to wrestle them into place myself. And actually, you can see I got myself stuck like a complete rookie. After putting one into the hanger, I somehow managed to wedge it into my ladder and couldn't get it back out without fighting with it for ages. And since I really didn't want to carry it back down the other side, absolute nightmare. I then add a few blocking pieces between the joists to tie everything together and stiffen the structure a bit more. On the other side of the room, it's pretty much the same story, except this beam is actually fairly straight along the axis I care about, so I can bolt them directly together. And here you can really see how much material was removed from this poor beam. After that, I can finally start installing the first battens. I'm intentionally starting somewhere near the middle of the room, but you'll understand why in the next episode. I'm pretty generous with the wood treatment. Some people will probably say it's not ideal. Maybe they're right. But personally, I'd rather make absolutely sure the bugs never come back in here. And honestly, I'm not too worried about it. The house breathes a lot. We're not here all week long, and it's probably going to stay that way for months, maybe even years. I set the laser back up on the other side, aligned with the ends of my first batten, and that's when I noticed the batten itself is slightly bowed upward. Honestly, having a laser really makes this kind of stuff obvious. But hey, it'd be too easy otherwise. And since I have to shim and adjust pretty much every beam anyway, it doesn't really change much. So I corrected with a few shims and screws. Once this first batten is perfectly leveled, I'll be able to keep moving forward while using the laser as a reference to maintain level across the entire floor. And thankfully, to speed things up a little, I've got my apprentice outside handing me the battens. Pretty handy. Funny thing is, it kind of looks like someone I know, but I just can't figure out who. Meanwhile, I'm organizing the battens up there while getting a visit from the site supervisor. And there's absolutely no way you could confuse the two of us. He's got way more hair than I do. After that, nothing too complicated. I simply continue laying the battens with an 11.4-inch spacing to create a dense structure, while also lining things up properly with the dimensions of my OSB sheets. And for a wooden floor, that part is absolutely essential. Alright, I finally made it to the end of this first section. Am I going to start working on the other side of the room now? Nothing's certain yet. In the meantime, I'm going to start preparing some material for the next step. I'll see you guys soon for another episode. This was Ludo, and you were watching RenovHome.